It looks like right-wing news website Op India has an axe to grind with fact-checkers. In a recently published article titled, "Fact-checking is a new name for the same old propaganda journalism," the website accused fact-checkers of peddling propaganda. The writer also called fact-checkers, quote, "journalists trying to re-enter journalism with a new job description." Well, we have some news for you. First of all, fact-checking and journalism aren't interchangeable terms. Fact-checking is a very small, yet a very important tenet of journalism. Secondly, we don't just conjure up facts in thin air, but put in actual hours of research. Thirdly, if Op India vilifies the role of fact-checkers, why exactly did it apply for certification from the International Fact-Checking Network last year? An application which was rejected, by the way. The writer also called a fact-checker an unbiased angel descended from above to bring you the facts. So we decided to reach out to fact-checkers in newsrooms around the world to find out, is there an angel amongst us?
Well, fact-checking has always been important. It's always been important to know what is true and what is not true. But these days, because of the sheer quantity of information that people in general are exposed to through the internet, through social media, it is more important than ever, not just that people know what's true, but that people know how to use the information that they have responsibly. So something that fact-checking can do is not just tell people, yeah, this is true, this isn't true, maybe we want to look at what this guy said a bit more closely, but we can give people tools to understand the ways that people use information to pursue different kinds of political, social, and economic goals.
Misinformation isn't new, but with the rise of apps like Facebook and Twitter, the speed at which misinformation can move is phenomenal. It can take an awful long time for the truth to catch up with the misinformation. So fact-checking is really important because misinformation can deepen divisions, sow tensions, further polarization. It can have real-world consequences, and we've seen that time and time again.
Fact-checking is important because it's essential that in a democracy we do not believe everything that is fed to us, everything that is out there. It's essential that we question, and fact-checking lets you do that. It tells you that not everything that you see is the truth, and it's important for us to be able to question because then we hold those in power accountable.
I think fact-checking is important because over the years we've seen that fake news has had real-life consequences. If I talk specifically about India, people have been lynched, people have been abused, they've faced threats because of disinformation which is doing the rounds on internet. We live in an increasingly polarized world, and more number of countries have accepted that fake news is a sort of a threat to democracy.
Other than the reasons one would usually give about why fact-checking is so important, which is that there's just so much misinformation and disinformation and fake news on the internet, and it's important to bust that, I think another reason is the fact that there's just so much information that we consume that is intentionally meant to elicit a certain response or trigger a certain emotion. What a good fact-check does is stops you from getting too ahead of yourself or getting too swayed by your emotions or what is being spoken of around you, and truly assess for yourself how you feel about a certain topic.
I think fact-checking has always been an important part of journalism, but today it's become a different branch of journalism because of various reasons. One of the reasons being rise of social media. With people having access to internet and smartphones, people are not just using social media platforms for entertainment purposes, but they're also using it for consuming information and sharing information. And when people are sharing information which is not verified, it can be extremely harmful.
We live at a time of information overload. The internet and social media in particular have made it easy for all types of narratives, accurate or inaccurate, to spread at a rapid rate across continents and languages. At a time of heightened tension, for instance when the world is facing an unprecedented public health crisis due to another virus, the rapid spread of false information can cause serious harm, and that's why fact-checkers step in to sift fact from fiction.
Fact-checking is incredibly important, given that one of the primary goals of journalism is to act in the public interest. Fact-checking is intended not to prop up an ideology or a political viewpoint, but to inform the public based on what can be verified.
The first step to making sure that your fact checks are as free from bias as they can be is to accept and to acknowledge the fact that no single human being can possibly be free from bias. None of us can be unbiased. So the first way to make sure that the risk of systematic biases is reduced is to increase the number of people who are involved in the production of any particular fact check. And finally, one thing that's really helpful in mitigating the risk of bias is to introduce elements of anonymity and randomness wherever you can. So a large part of the way that we minimize the risk of biases is that the checks that we carry out are mostly, the vast majority, are submitted by our users, and because we have no control over what our users send to us to be fact checked, we just get what we're given.
Every single person has their own biases and opinions. That's just part of being human. But understanding what they are and how they can sway your opinion, that's really important. So taking any statement, no matter who it's from or where it's from, as a clean slate and being willing to going back to original sources, that's the key.
Of course, we do have our inherent biases, and that is probably because we are also humans. And personally, what works for me is working in a team. So at WebQoof, what we do is that every story that we put out goes through 3 to 4 people. Yes, it does slow down the process of fact checking, but in the end of the day, the goal is to put verified information out there.
Well, the only way I make sure my inherent biases don't come into my work is by acknowledging the fact that I have inherent biases. Other than that, I have built and continue building a list of trusted resources and make sure that my research is thorough. I double check everything that I do, and I make sure that my writing is objective, is clear.
I think this one's an easy one. We rely on hard facts and hard evidence to make sure that there is no room for any doubt in any fact check that we are doing.
Well, that is pretty simple because it doesn't matter who is spreading misinformation. What matters is the truth. So it's important to not care what the source is, but if what they're saying is true or not. So you might believe in a certain ideology, but it's essential that you don't let the bias, if your internal biases, reflect on your work. You just have to focus on what the truth is, and if the information in hand is distorted, then you write on it, you report on it, you tell people what the truth is.
We must remain independent of political parties and vested interests, and only examine claims based on established facts and existing evidence. We should constantly keep ourselves up to date with the views and perspectives of all sides to a contentious political, economic, social, scientific, or cultural debate. Fact checkers are neither campaigners nor activists.
What I do to remove any inherent bias from my fact checking is to let the evidence lead the investigation. Not a hunch or a mere intuition, but what can be established as provably true. Unfortunately, we see often that people have trouble agreeing on the facts, given that information is regularly viewed through a politicized lens. But I think that's why it's especially important to outline as clearly and succinctly as possible how one came to their conclusion with fact checking.
No, I'm actually from Leeds, but besides that, no reputable fact checker, no reputable journalist for that matter, should ever really expect you to take them at their word that they are honest, that they are unbiased, or that they're trustworthy. Since we're doing biblical references, and by the fruits of our labour should you know us, you should look at a fact checker's work and see if they systematically favour one side or another, then maybe that's reason not to trust somebody.
Nope, I'm no unbiased angel. Nobody is. But I believe that everybody can have their own toolkit and know where to go and how to fact check misinformation. It's really simple. All you need to do is follow certain steps and going back to original sources and being wary of your own biases.
No, definitely not. We're no angels, and we do have our own biases, but we do not let our biases permeate into our stories.
As flattered as I am that Op India called fact checkers like me angels descended from above, that's nowhere close to what I am. I have always been a reporter and a journalist, and fact checking is considered a tenet of journalism that is becoming increasingly relevant in today's times, especially when there are false narratives being spread that are affecting our day-to-day lives. if I can sort of bust some of those myths even a little bit, I consider myself lucky.
No, I'm not an angel who's descended from above to bring truth to the people. I'm just a journalist who's working in the field of fact-checking, and it doesn't make any sense because no, fact-checking is not propaganda. It's just, people bringing the truth, and that's all there is to it.
No, I'm not. I didn't descend from anywhere either. Like everybody else, I have my own views and my own opinions, but crucially, I strive to always keep them to myself, specifically on all public platforms, including on social media. It's perfectly possible for a journalist or fact checker to have their own private views, but examine claims or contentious issues from an unbiased position, as long as they reflect the views of all sides to an issue and stick to evidence. No one is interested in my opinion. People just want to know what the facts are.
I can state that I am not an unbiased angel who descended from above to bring people facts. Like other journalists, I am human and I am not impervious to error. But I am passionate about investigation and establishing truth, regardless of where that investigation leads me. And my ultimate aim at the end of the day will always be to provide the public with accurate and honest reporting.